There is a trigger warning for biological waste. Am I the a-hole for leaving my boyfriend for no reason? I, 26 female, have been with my now ex-boyfriend, Eric, 28 male, for 2 years. Overall, we've had a good relationship. Nothing crazy. Until last night when things completely fell apart. We were out at a bar with some of his friends, just having a normal night. Drinks, food, the usual. Eric and his friend, Mark, 28 male, were joking around, and Eric made a comment about how much Mark was eating. Something like, "Careful, Mark. You'll eat the whole dang bar." It seemed harmless at first, just typical guy humor. But then Mark looked right at me and said, "If only she knew." It was one of those moments where you instantly feel uncomfortable, like there's something going on behind your back. I had no idea what Mark was talking about, and the whole vibe at the table shifted. But before I could even react, Eric exploded. He went off on Mark, screaming at him to shut the freak up, and even tried to get physical. His other friends had to hold him back. Mark didn't really react, which only made Eric angrier. The whole thing was awkward as hell, and we ended up leaving early. When we got back to my place, I couldn't stop thinking about that comment. So I asked Eric, "What the hell did Mark mean by, 'if only she knew'? What don't I know?" And instead of just answering me like a normal person, Eric lost it again. He started yelling at me, telling me to drop it and stop being paranoid. He was dodging every question, getting more pissed every time I brought it up. I wasn't trying to pick a fight, I just wanted to know what was going on. It felt like there was something important being hidden from me, and I wasn't about to let it slide. But every time I asked, he'd just get more defensive and angry. Finally, he stormed out of my apartment. He doesn't live with me, so I locked the door and called it a night. I didn't hear from him until this morning, and when I did, it was just more angry texts, telling me to drop it and leave him alone. At that point, I was done. I'm not going to sit around and be treated like I'm crazy for asking a simple question. I texted him back saying we're done, I need space, and if he can't be honest with me, then I don't want any part of this relationship. End of story. Now here's where it gets worse. He's been going around to our mutual friends, telling them that I left him for no reason, and trying to make it seem like I'm the one who overreacted. Some of them have even reached out to me saying I should have just let it go and that I'm blowing things out of proportion. I told them to mind their own freaking business. I don't care what they think. None of them were in that moment. None of them saw how he acted, and none of them have to live with the pit in their stomach that I've had since that weird-ass comment from Mark. I'm not about to stay in a relationship where I feel like something shady is going on behind my back. If Eric can't be straight with me after 2 years together, then what's the point? So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for leaving him over this? Now, for some comments. Previous Broccoli 88. I get the distinct feeling that this is not the first time you've gotten on him about possible infidelity. OP said, "You're right, sadly, a few months ago, he was staying out late when going out with friends. I asked him about it. He stopped going out with his friends because, you want this, you don't want me to be happy." Environmental C 3799 said, "That's wild. I'm sorry you're going through this. I'd ask Mark or his mother for details." OP said, "Mark messaged me saying, 'Sorry, you have to deal with that,' before blocking me IDK, how to contact him." Environmental C3799 responded, "I'm guessing he said that in the restaurant in the first place because he wanted to warn you and your ex wouldn't tell you. But Mark's a coward." OP said, "That's what I'm thinking as well." Soul Drakesa said, "Not the a-hole, but also I think the situation didn't ask for a neurosurgeon to figure out. Based on the comment, it seems pretty obvious that Eric used to, or may still have, be fat, and it obviously is a sensible point for him. Potentially he even was bullied by Mark for it, which is why he reacted extremely angry and hot-headed on the matter. I think the context made it pretty clear that something along the lines was going on. That doesn't excuse him snapping at you, but you should get better at reading your partner's behavior, because I am a goddamn guy, and not the emotional type either. But unless you aren't the sharpest tool in the shed, These are the obvious first things that come to mind. OP said, "Thanks for your perspective. I get what you're saying about Eric possibly having a history with body image or being bullied, which might explain his reaction. But my point is that even if he has personal issues, it doesn't give him a free pass to lash out at me. I understand that men can have a tough time expressing their feelings, but relationships require open communication from both sides. I wasn't trying to poke at any insecurities. I genuinely wanted to know what was going on." When I asked him about Mark's comment, I expected a conversation, not an explosion of anger. It's not about being the sharpest tool in the shed, but rather about being in a relationship where both partners can talk openly without fear of being yelled at or dismissed. I've always tried to support him, and I want a partner who can communicate with me, especially when things get awkward. I appreciate your insight. Legitimate Role 9713 said, "I don't know, it kind of seems like you just wanted a reason to leave. There must be something you're doing to make him act like that if he's denying it. Why don't you believe him? You're supposed to believe your partner over everything, and for your friends, you could have been nicer to them. They are just worried Mark probably just wanted to get into your pants, and you probably would have let him judging off that you believed him over your own boyfriend." OP replied, "Wow, your comment is a prime example of how utterly clueless you are about relationships. This isn't about me wanting a reason to leave. It's about having the guts to walk away from someone who can't even communicate like a grown-up. If you think I should just sit back and accept Eric's insane outbursts as normal, then it's clear you've never been in a healthy relationship. Seriously, Eric's reaction was a complete overreaction. If you expect me to interpret his rage as love, you must be living in some fantasy world. I'm not a mind reader, and I'm not going to tolerate his childish behavior just because it makes him feel better." And your pathetic defense of my friends? They actually care about me. Unlike you, who seems more interested in playing the white knight for some dude's toxic behavior. If Mark had a crush on me, that's his issue, not mine. I'm not the one who lost their cool and threw a tantrum. That was all Eric. By the way, I looked at your post history, and it's painfully obvious you have a deep-seated hatred for women because you got cheated on. Maybe it's time for you to shut up since you clearly can't keep a woman around. You're just bitter and pathetic, and it shows. Before you come at me, do everyone a favor and take a long, hard look in the mirror. This isn't about me believing Mark over Eric. It's about refusing to let some dude's explosive temper dictate my worth. So why don't you crawl back to your sad little life and keep your toxic opinions to yourself?" Update. I feel like I'm living in some kind of twisted nightmare, and the more I try to make sense of it, the worse it gets. Mark called me today while I was at work. I didn't expect him to call me because he was ignoring me. I stepped outside to take the call, and he told me something that I never in a million years could have prepared for. He told me that Eric has been putting other men's semen into my food, drinks, skincare shampoo conditioner, and even my toothpaste. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being dramatic. That's what Mark said. Eric has apparently been hooking up with random men, having them finish into cups, and then using it in my meals and drinks like it's some kind of sick joke. Even as I write this, I'm still in complete disbelief. Who does that to someone? Mark said he found out about this a week ago, but for some reason, it took him that long to tell me. A week. I've been living my life, completely oblivious, trusting Eric, someone I loved while this was happening behind my back. I feel so betrayed, so disgusted, and so violated. When I asked Mark if he and Eric were having an affair, or if this was some sort of twisted thing between them, he swore they weren't. And he even made a gross comment about not wanting to touch Eric because who knows what diseases he has. That made my stomach turn. I'm getting tested for everything now because I don't know what's been in my body. When I got home, I went straight to the kitchen. Mark told me to check under the sink, and there they were, the cups, hidden behind the cleaning supplies. I lost my shit. I threw out everything in the kitchen and bathroom, even stuff I knew wasn't touched. I don't care. Everything feels contaminated now. My home doesn't feel like a safe space anymore. Every time I walk into the kitchen, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I can't even function without my mind going to dark places, thinking about all the times I had no idea what was happening. I don't have any solid proof of this. It's just Mark's word and those disgusting cups, and I feel so powerless. If nothing can be done about this, I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. How is this even legal? How can someone get away with something so vile? I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust anyone again. I think this whole thing has been messing with my head in ways I can't even explain. I feel dirty. I feel like I've been violated on such a deep level, and there's nothing I can do to undo it. My mom wants me to check into a hospital just to make sure I'm okay mentally, and I'm honestly going to do it. I don't feel stable right now. I don't feel like myself. I'm scared I might hurt myself or someone else. Eric was eating the same food. He was eating the food that he had contaminated right alongside me. Was it a kink? A power trip? I don't even know anymore. All I know is that the man I thought I knew, the man I loved, is a complete stranger to me now. I can't believe I've been living with someone capable of something so vile. I feel like I'm losing my mind, and I don't know how I'm going to come back from this. How can he do this to me? I'm genuinely losing it. I'm a danger to myself I won't be on. I'm going to check myself into the hospital. Now for some comments. HackerMan6 said, I'm so sorry this happened to you. You didn't deserve this. No one does. I hope you can get the help you need. You are stronger than you know. Rain Puzzle Headed 151 said, I am so sorry this happened to you. You have to get the cups and everything out of the trash. Maybe your mom or a friend can do it, and you have to go to the police with it as evidence. And if you can, get Mike to write everything in text for you. You have to get the cups and everything out of the trash. Maybe your mom or a friend can do it, and you have to go to the police with it as evidence. And if you can, get Mike to write everything in text for you. Creative Ad 7995 said, I was wondering when someone was going to say, take the cups and what Mark told you directly to the police. You have been SA'd. That is the reality of this whole situation. Those cups need to be tested to see if they are actually semen. If so, charges need to be pressed. And not just the cups. The shampoo's toothpaste. All of it needs to go to the police station. He needs to be in jail if he was really putting stuff into your food. And honestly, he needs his ass beat too. Grown man ruining my son's life. Help me ruin his. Trigger warnings. Sugar use. Taking advantage of a vulnerable person. Police restraints. Possible animal neglect. Hello, and thank you in advance for your creativity and time. I'm living in hell right now and need ideas. My son just turned 18 and is disabled. He needs and takes multiple medications and needs support at school. He does well in some settings and is on track to graduate and pursue trade school with support. And we're so proud of him. He is extremely impressionable, a little socially awkward and desperate for friends. For years we've struggled because he gives his possessions away, gets in bad situations, someone offering to sell him rocks at a park, him thinking they are collectible polished gemstones, so he asks to see them, and then freaks out when he realizes they're drugs, and is easily bullied. He will do anything to be liked, which breaks my heart. And we're working on it in therapy with trusted adults, etc. The grown man. This guy is 28 years old. Let's call him Quentin. He's frequently homeless, often sleeping in a tent in parks. Or he'll get a voucher from our city to stay in a motel. He has 2 pit bulls, not spayed or neutered, that he will leave in the tent or motel room when he works, at a fast food job. I actually have compassion for him and his animals, if he had nothing to do with my son. It started with him asking my son to watch his dogs in the park while he worked. My son is so thrilled to have a friend and be helping, and he does love animals. So he will spend 8+ hours a day or night alone in a park watching these dogs. He would ask if he took dog food, toys, and blankets from our house for Quentin's dogs. He does it whether we say yes or no. Months ago, we would say yes, because I appreciate that my son wants to help these dogs. Starting a few months ago, when my son turned 18, Quentin told him he didn't have to stay with us and could stay with him. For weeks, our son was sleeping in the tent with the dogs or rough in the park. Quentin gives him beer and weed. Our son will watch the dogs for entire shifts while he works. Quentin tells him he will help him get a tent and vouchers too. The police are sympathetic, especially because my son has disabilities and also some medical issues. But he is 18. School is supportive, but he's almost to graduation. And again, he's 18. We had not ever pursued medical conservatorship or anything like that because before now, lots of things were going right, and we don't take that lightly. Removing civil liberties from another young adult. In the past week, Quentin got another room at the motel. He messaged my son to come stay with him, and he did. My son sat in the room and watched his dogs while he worked, and I imagine they smoked and hung out when Quentin was not working. My son would respond to text messages from us, but asserted he is an adult and can go where he wants. He missed a week of medication, school, part of his part-time job, and another important appointment. Being Quentin's friend is more important than all of these things, and he feels good helping his friend and says, "Quentin is like a brother to me. He's the best brother I've ever had." Quentin's own family has kicked him out. They are nearby. No idea who watches the dogs when my son is not available. Quentin doesn't drive, and earlier this week, my son gave Quentin his bike because he needs it more than me. Our son came home yesterday and had a complete psychiatric crisis because he's been unmedicated, and probably also high drinking for so many days. His medical issues are exacerbated. He was banging his head on the concrete floor, and when we called emergency services, he spit at the police, so they put a spit hood on him and restrained him. It was horrific, and he was begging for help. We're not sure when he will be stable enough to come home and may need a medical procedure. He was coherent today, crying, apologizing, but still 100% certain Quentin is his friend. I also feel terrible because I know that at age 18, it's a good thing for my son to be not telling us everything, having his own friends and life, etc. I look forward to that day. He does have other friends who are closer to his age and their hanging out is more appropriate. But these other kids have busier lives and more responsibilities. They aren't available 24/7. Quentin is, and my son feels so good when his phone pings, and it's his friend needing him. How can I make this man's life miserable? Or at least make it too uncomfortable or risky to keep hanging out with my son? Nothing to harm or stress the dogs, please. It's not their fault, and my son would never forgive me. Some of OP's comments. Commenter. Sounds like you might need to pursue medical conservatorship, which I know you don't want to do, but it sounds like you definitely have grounds and it's the lesser of two evils at this point. I don't see things ending up well without intervention. OP said, "Thank you for this," and others who prompt me to reconsider conservatorship. I called a lawyer on Monday. I had already done research and collected that info, but had a lot of hope that once sheltered work started up and he had less free time, it might not be necessary. Commenter. Pay someone to be your son's friend that's more of a caretaker? Honestly, this guy sounds at the very least like a scammer. Sometimes the only way people get deep in one scam is a second scam. It's sad, but there's literally a bot on r/scams for recovery scams. Basically, people promise to recover your loss for some fee. It's not great, but if you could afford someone to offer better friendship and then point out that his old friend is lame, it'll be like positive peer pressure. Maybe help the person could help them join appropriate opportunities for new friendship, then phase out. OP said, "This is another great idea, and I appreciated the comments below it here in the thread. I have reached out to some young adults older than him that might serve as mentors or fitness coaches. Hang out with him, work out, play basketball, build positive connections with people who don't wish him ill. Thank you for this. I have a few possibilities here in our area." Commenter. If it was my son, there's nothing I wouldn't do to ensure his safety and well-being. My advice would be to just make this man's life miserable. Contact his work and make complaints against him. Tell them he's selling weed or is abusive to customers. If he has a room, report him for dealing drugs and threats of violence. If he stays in the park, phone the police and claim his dogs are attacking people in the park. All anonymously, of course. Maybe nip down to the park late at night and set off a shitload of fireworks near to his tent. Do this over and over again. Make it your life's mission to ruin him. He'll move on when it all gets too much. My son is autistic too. and him being taken advantage of is a great worry for me. I hope it all works out for you. OP said, "Thank you for this. I did contact his employer because my son isn't the only teen in the neighborhood Quentin is giving alcohol to. I also contacted management at his motel, where he occasionally stays, to let them know this person was letting a vulnerable teen stay there, and miss school, and meds, and that it was surely against their policy. Quentin was not happy I contacted his work and the motel. I felt really empowered by so many of the comments here to engage around this and make his life more difficult. Get son a dog. Yes, and great insight to others who mentioned maybe getting my son a dog. He actually has a medical alert service dog and other pet dogs, and cat and fish. So animals are truly a special interest of his. Heartbreakingly, he will leave the service dog with us because the dog is safe and we love them, but Quentin's dogs need him. But yes, we lean on the gifts he has with animals to build other areas of his life. Talk to the police again. I just spoke to the local police again tonight. Sometimes they lean heavily on he's 18, he's an adult, but some of them, when they get to know him a bit, realize he's vulnerable and are more willing to help. Keeping him busy? Yes. Son has an interview tomorrow at an animal adoption center. This is the type of setting that would keep him busy, help him feel like he's doing something important, and give him better adults to be around. Commenter. Get rid of the dogs. Go on Facebook and post how they are being abused, and an intervention must take place. Get rid of the tent. Is he camping illegally? Call the cops. Get rid of Quentin. He's not good for anyone right now, not even himself. A major intervention is 100% necessary for all parties involved. For the police, for you, and for your son. There is so much to lose with inaction. OP said, I did part of this evening. Son got home from the hospital last night, back on meds, stable. Goes to his special interest class at school, does great. Goes for a bike ride. Lo and behold, he's back out with Quentin and the dogs. It's after 10 p.m., so the park is closed. Quentin is pitching the tent. I called the non-emergency line to let the police know a homeless man with 2 pit bulls was sleeping in that park near the playground. Police went and moved him. Sent Son back to us. I will keep doing this. I might also flyer homes near the park to let them know there's a homeless man with 2 pit bulls who provides alcohol and weed to teens in the park near their home to help make it less comfortable for him to be there. Thank you for this advice. Commenter. You could see if Quentin would accept cash and a bus ticket to leave town. It would be the least messy way to disentangle him from your son. Or if you can round up a group of scary people in a van, a different kind of ride out. I appreciate and applaud the autonomy you've given your son, but it's time for his own sake. OP said, Thank you for this. I did go find Quentin after seeing this advice and offer him cash to leave my son alone and stop taking his calls. He refused and promptly told Son that I had offered. He also told my son I'm too attached to him. Blocked the number on Son's phone. Thank you for these. Yes, we've blocked his number in the past. And given Son an old flip phone when smartphones were too much to manage healthily. But Quentin doesn't even always have a phone. They video chat on Instagram. They also can borrow anyone's phone, log into Insta, and communicate. Go with him to every hangout. I loved this advice to crash every hangout. I started doing that tonight. Quentin was so mad. He told me I'm harassing him. He finally walked off and told my son not to follow him. Son is mad at me and parroting that Quentin says I'm too attached. Fine with me. I can do this every day. Great advice. Now for the update. A few months ago, I came here asking for tips to help get a man named Quentin out of my son's life. I'm super grateful for all of the ideas and many kind words. As of today, and for the last 3 months, my son is happy and healthy. We found a transitional living house for him with 5 other young men and 2 house managers. And a dog. He's learning to be an adult, learning to cook, clean, and get a job. It includes therapy, gym every day, yoga, skateboarding, truly a dream come true. The house is about 40 minutes away from where Quentin lives, and my son feels he has friends, is purposeful and feels adult, and is learning and busy. They will also do job training. Before this happened, I took as much of your advice as was possible. I contacted the manager at Quentin's workplace and the motel he occasionally stays at. I told them Quentin was allowing a disabled teenager to stay with him and giving him, and other teens, alcohol. Manager is local small business owner and took my information seriously. I also went to motel and pointed out the sign that said all guests must have ID. My son does not. I told the manager I hoped he was abiding by rules, or I'd contact the corporate. I also started calling the non-emergency PD line when he was camped after park closing time and leaving his dogs during the day. PD would move him along. Someone had the great advice of being his best friend and showing up all the time. So I did. Quentin wants to see my son. Hey, here I am too. I'm at the park. I'm at your work. I'm near the motel. I even prepared flyers to let others in the park neighborhood, with a playground for small children, know about the tent, camping, and unsupervised, unneutered pit bulls. Quentin got increasingly upset. He said I was stalking him and he was going to call the police. I said, politely, please do. I'd love to tell the police more about what you're doing with my son and other vulnerable young people. I told him, you want to be in my son's life? I'm in your life. Up to you. I really felt bold after all of your advice and encouragement. I was willing to keep going for the long haul. In the meantime, we found a lawyer, and I started tapping into resources to find my son some kind of job training, because he really wants to help and feel grown up. For a few weeks, he was working at a drugstore through a program through a local agency. That was huge for him, stocking and cleaning and helping people. It also kept him busy for about a month and kind of removed Quentin slightly. Quentin either got sick of seeing me or afraid of losing his job. The location of the motel he had been staying at occasionally stopped letting him, so he had to start using another location much farther away. Farther to walk to work and harder to deal with. I think he realized my son wasn't worth the trouble I was causing and just stopped contacting him. Thank you so much for all of your ideas. I was so focused on trying to fix it from my son's end as his mom, I had no idea how to actually deal with Q. You all were fantastic. Huge thanks from the mom of a happy, healthy, busy, and purposeful young adult son. More comments. Commenter. Glad things in your situation are going in a positive direction, but wondering why you have to mention unneutered pit bulls in such a negative context. I'm 100% about spay and neutering all animals right now because this country is in a crisis with the homeless pet population. But I feel like your statement wasn't mentioned because of the same reason. OP replied, absolutely. Thank you for naming that. I'm also worried about the animals. One reason I struggled at first with what to do is if my son weren't a factor, I would feel drawn to helping Q and his animals, or at least pointing him to resources for that. I have colleagues who work for organizations who help those without homes to stay with their pets, often their family. Since I wrote the first post, one of these dogs has had puppies. I also tried to help my son realize that he wasn't responsible for the dogs, and it was a hard life for all of them. Until it became clear how in danger my son was. I guess I mention it as another example of how the adult in this situation was not being responsible, and how the untended dogs were not safe for themselves or other unfixed animals who might come into the park. For me, the state of the animals is also sad, and one reason my son was so compelled to help, which is a negative. I feel for them and never wanted to harm or scare them.